Long before sugar dusted our cakes or candies, there was honey, sunlight spun into liquid gold, a gift whispered from blossom to bee to hive. Imagine the hum of wings, the warm, heavy air of summer meadows, and the slow weft of waxen combs rising from a hollow tree. Historically, honey was not gathered easily. It was found by seekers and risked by the climbers that hoarded and offered and sold it. It was prized and it was praised. Honey was the food of gods and spirits, the medicine of light, and a spell preserved in golden sleep. Honey is a taste of paradise and a sip of immortality. Today, we walk the shimmering path that stretches from those ancient hives to our own hearths. We gather the magic of honey, savoring sweetness, weaving spells, and honoring the sacred work of the bees. Welcome, dear listener, to this episode of Wishcrafting. On today's episode, we will explore the work of bees and how we can be allies to all pollinators, as well as some juicy magic and, of course, a bit of folklore. Let's start by diving in to what it takes to actually bring honey into existence. Inside a hive, the air smells like wax and sun-warmed nectar. Bees move like golden smoke, sharing the secrets of the fields through their ancient waggle dance, mapping flowers across hillsides and meadows with the language written into their very being. The bees' waggle dance, and yes, it's called waggle dance, is a complex form of communication used by honeybees to inform their hive mates about the location and quality of a food source. It's a figure-8 pattern that relays information about distance, direction, and quality. The dancer wags its abdomen during a straight run, which is called the waggle phase, and then it turns and loops, repeating the pattern to create a figure-8 shape. This intrinsic form of communication between bees is fascinating, and the figure-8 symbol that they make during their waggle dance as they communicate with one another lends a hand to the infinite wisdom of the bees. A single bee may visit between 50 and 100 flowers in one single journey on one day. She gathers nectar in her honey stomach, which is a second sacred vessel inside her body, and passes it from mouth to mouth, bee to bee, weaving enzymes into the nectar, thickening it and curing it. Once in the hive, thousands of wing beats fan the nectar into a thick and luscious syrup. That syrup is then sealed into combs of wax, kissed by the warmth of the hive, and it becomes honey, the alchemy of the sun and the earth, made into liquid gold, the drink of the gods, the food of spirits, and a natural, delicious, and precious substance that we still use on a regular basis today. Honey is a regular part of my everyday life, whether it is in tea, drizzled over a treat, or just taken by the spoonful to combat seasonal allergies. Honey has so many uses, magically and mundanely. And I call it liquid gold because that's exactly what it is. To make just 1 pound of honey, bees must visit over 2 million flowers. 1 pound of honey comes from 2 million flowers. That is so impressive. However, we can't talk about honey without talking about the truth that the bees are facing today. But don't worry, I'll bring it back around. Today, the hives that bring us this liquid gold hum with uncertainty. Colony collapse disorder, pesticides, habitat loss, and disease have weakened bees worldwide. Not just honeybees, all bees, and our other pollinators as well. Pesticides, especially neonicotinoids, scramble the bee's ability to navigate and weakens their body, which confuses the dance that is so important to the work of bees, their waggle dance, their very way of communicating to one another. And it's as if the songline of the earth itself, these stewards that are so important to so many different ecosystems, where the liquid gold of honey is just a byproduct of their stewardship, has been tangled and torn. But there are ways that we can help them, starting with planting native bee-loving flowers. One of the most powerful ways to aid pollinators is by planting native, pollinator-friendly plants. Native species have evolved in partnership with local bees and, of course, local pollinators, offering not only nectar, but the right shape, scent, and seasonality for your local pollinator populations. Here are some beloved allies for North American bees and pollinators. Purple coneflower, or echinacea. It's immune boosting for us and nourishing for the bees. Plus, their flowers are big, bold, and vibrant, a midsummer beacon of vitality. Next we have bee balm, or monarda. It's bursting with nectar and beloved by both bees and hummingbirds. Monarda actually serves as an essential plant for these species. Next we have milkweed, or Asclepias, which you might know as an essential food source for monarch butterflies, but it's also a key nectar source for native bees. Native bees are so important. The honeybee is a very specific species of bee, but there are many other species of bees that do very important pollinating work, and it is so important that we also aid our native bees and native pollinators as well. Another lovely, easy-to-grow plant are black-eyed Susans, or Rudbeckia, which are radiant golden blooms that are the classic flower shape that you might draw as a child, and they are very prolific. You get many flowers out of Rudbeckia. Finally, my last suggestion for bee-loving, pollinator-friendly plants is goldenrod, also known as solidago. Solidago is a vital late-season plant. They flower when all other flowers have faded, and they also last well into the fall season, providing essential habitat and food for our pollinators. Plus, they're super beautiful, and when they catch that autumn sun in golden hour, it is as if the fields or the roadsides or wherever goldenrod is planted comes alive with the sunlight, and it is a sight to behold. Whatever you choose or whenever you choose to grow these, even a small patch of land, a pot on a balcony, or a windowsill, you become a keeper of sweetness and a steward to your local pollinators. Another way to be an ally is to refuse pesticides, or if you don't have a garden or a green space that you care for, to be very loud and tell your friends and loved ones about refusing pesticides. Instead, we can companion plant and welcome in natural predators to deter pests, as well as using natural sprays when truly necessary. Going pesticide-free is a radical act of love, and instead of choosing chemical controls, you can garden in harmony with nature. Let's talk about it. Companion planting. Growing plants that naturally deter pests alongside your crops. For example, marigolds with tomatoes or basil with peppers can really aid and welcome in natural predators. All of the pests we don't want on our crops have natural predators. Bringing in plants that have aromatic oils that bring the bugs to that plant instead of the crop you want to harvest is very effective, and it doesn't require chemical controls. It just requires a little bit of altering the way you might see your garden, as well as patience and perhaps a bit of research. A quick Google search will tell you what your crop can use as a companion plant to deter pests. It's amazing what happens when you let go of chemical controls. It takes a while to get used to, but perhaps you see a bit more holes in your leaves, or especially your companion plants if you plant them. But what happens when you take away chemical controls is that you welcome in everything else. Not only are your crop pests going to come in because there's no chemicals, but those predators are going to naturally follow their food source, their prey. Aphids are naturally going to attract ladybugs, and if you're not spraying, the ladybugs aren't dying, and they will proliferate in your garden and take care of the aphid problem for you. There is always a solution to chemical-free gardening. But what happens if you have an outbreak and you don't know when or where the ladybugs will show up, or say you have spider mites on an heirloom rose variety, something that requires your immediate attention? Natural sprays can be quite effective and cheap. Neem oil is a very popular one, which is diluted neem oil that's typically in water or soap. However, soap sprays are very cheap to make and can really manage an outbreak very, very quickly. These are to be used sparingly, of course, and never sprayed on flowers that bees are actively visiting, or other pollinators for that matter. And Google, again, can give you the formula to create a neem oil or soap spray for very acute outbreaks of pests on any plant, inside or out. Outside of an acute outbreak of a pest in the garden or in your beloved potted plants, having plant diversity or a rich tapestry of plants can also draw in those beneficial insects and strengthen the garden ecosystem as a whole. If you don't have the resources to plant various different species and varieties of beneficial plants, another thing that you can do is leave a wild edge or a messy corner in your yard or your raised garden bed even. A messy corner is going to be a tangle of plants you might call weeds for the purpose of sheltering bees, butterflies, and all of our other good bugs, pollinators, or natural predators of pests. Perhaps you have seen the sign that says "Leave your leaves," because leaving nature to do its natural processes of leaves falling and then breaking down can be so beneficial. Leaves, twigs, hollow stems of grasses that have fallen over shelter our insects and are very, very important habitat for these insects. So leaving wild edges, leaving your leaves in the fall and winter can be a very easy, very simple way to be an ally to the insects that are so important to the health of the ecosystems around us. Really quickly, before we keep going, I want to tell you a story about a messy corner that was very unexpected and delightful. The home that my partner lived in before we lived in the house we're in now had a messy corner. They had left a strip of grass right there in the middle of the yard just to see what happened. And what happened is the grass does what it does, and it grew tall, and it went to seed, and they just left it. Very tall, 2 to 3 foot shoots and clumps of grasses stayed there for an entire year. The grasses' stems hollowed out and became dry and brittle, and some of them fell over and made little lumps of hay on the ground, or what looked like hay and straw on the ground. And soon enough, there was a very soft habitat of grass right there in the middle of the yard. It looked unkempt and it looked wild, but I didn't really think too much of it until one day I was sitting in the kitchen on a winter morning having my cup of coffee, and it was a little bit cloudy outside, and the clouds parted just enough for a sunbeam to shine on this wild, unkempt patch of grass in the middle of the backyard, right? However, we had just had a bit of ice, so everything was covered in a soft layer of frost, very light dusting of frost. So this grass absolutely sparkled in the morning sun. What was a dull, brown, clumpy and lumpy strip of grass with a couple of shoots of seed heads coming up out of it turned into a golden delight for the senses. It was absolutely beautiful to look at. It was textured, glowing, and vibrant. That alone would have been enough for me to rethink how I view wild, unkempt corners of the garden. However, just to top it all off, as soon as the sun came out, a group of tiny little birds that I now know to be sparrows flew over to the grasses, landed on the very tips of the seed heads of the grasses, and they were using the tips of these dead grasses to go down as if it was a roller coaster. They'd land and their weight would bring them down, down, down to the ground, and then at the very last minute they'd fly off, and the seeds would release into the air, and the other birds, would go after the flying seeds. They did this for so long, and it was such a beautiful sight to see these birds playing together with their food and the sunlight and the gleaming, icy grass. Oh, I've never seen anything like it, and it was a lovely, beautiful moment that I just so happened to be able to witness because these folks left a wild strip of grass in their backyard and let it do what it needed to do for a year. And it provided joy, habitat, and food to these birds, and in turn, it provided tons of joy and entertainment for me drinking my coffee on that frosty winter morning. This is the joy of tending to our wild spaces and tending to our pollinators, tending to the bees. When you do this, when you steward the land in that way, you tend to the magic of renewal and the earth itself. I'm very passionate about this and love to have this kind of conversation. But let's now dive into the metaphysical and see what all the buzz over honey is about. Across ancient civilizations, honey was a bridge between worlds, earthly, but also touched by the divine. In Egypt, honey was sacred to the sun god Ra, even so far as to be called the tears of Ra in ancient Egyptian language. In Egypt, honey was sealed into tombs of pharaohs as a promise of sustenance in the afterlife. And astonishingly, pots of ancient honey have been found in archaeological sites, and these pots of honey remain edible over thousands of years. That's incredible, all on its own. A 10-year-old pot of honey that you could still eat is impressive in my head. So hundreds to thousands of years, that blows my mind. Just a hop and a skip over away from Egypt, in Greece, we found the Melissae, bee priestesses that served Demeter and Artemis by engaging in the sacred act of beekeeping around their temples. In Greece, we also find Aristaeus, the son of Apollo and the huntress Cyrene, and who became a patron of rural communities. Thanks to his parentage, he was very skilled in things like herbalism, cheese making, and beekeeping. My kind of guy. His myths attribute him to bringing the art of beekeeping to humanity, which was truly a gift of survival and sweetness. A little further west, the Celts believed that bees moved freely between worlds. If you have read the Outlander series, not watched the TV series, but read the book series, you'll know that the last book in the series was called Go and Tell the Bees That I Have Gone. And this harkens back to this belief that bees moved freely between worlds. You could go and tell the bees because the bees would carry the information where it needed to go. Bees were kept and whispered to before important journeys, and their hives were draped in mourning cloth when death came near. When a birth was going to happen, when a visitor was coming, you would go and tell your hive. You would go and tell the bees, and trust that the bees would bring that information where it needed to go. In certain Celtic cultures, when a death was near or had happened, you would pour honey over the grave of the newly deceased to sweeten the soul's journey into the afterlife, which I absolutely love. But that's not all. In India, honey appeared in the Rig Veda, one of the 4 canonical texts of Hinduism. In this text, it was written about as a sacred substance and tells of honey being used in anointing rites which still happen today. So you see, honey is more than just food. The reason it survived in the tombs of ancient Egyptian kings is because it has incredible preservation qualities. Honey will stay good forever. But besides that, you can put honey on wounds because it is incredibly antimicrobial and antibacterial. Honey preserves. It protects. Honey is a soft golden binding between the body and the spirit, and its mythology clearly shows that through line. Honey draws love, it sweetens words, it heals our wounds, and can preserve the integrity of your spells or magical workings, of course. Honey is paradise sealed into wax, in my opinion. I love honey. I use it every day. I work with it and honor it every single day in one way or another. But my favorite way to work with honey, especially during the warm seasons, is by combining the magic of honey with the magic of fruit. Fruits are the jewels of the earth, each one carrying a whisper of sun and seed. When paired with honey, their magic deepens and becomes a ritual feast for both body and spirit. Here are just a couple of fruits that I enjoy combining with the magic of honey. Apple, that which opens the path between worlds with one bite. Apple, that is associated with wisdom, love, and gateways to the other world, is one of my favorite fruits to combine with the magic of honey. Working with apples and honey could be excellent to aid in love spells, insights, or initiation. And of course, journeys to anywhere you'd like to go, physical or non. I don't personally enjoy grapes. However, I do enjoy the aesthetics of grapes and their magical connotations and their magical correspondences. Grapes go from cluster to cup. from sweetness to spirit, and they symbolize abundance, ecstasy, and transformation. Working with grapes and honey together can be an excellent offering or induction into Dionysian energies, as well as wild, untamed magic. One of my favorite fruits on the face of this planet is peaches. Peaches are incredibly nostalgic to me, and I love them now just as much as I have since I was a child. Peaches are delightfully pink and golden, a blush of the sweet breath of eternity, in my personal opinion. They symbolize longevity, pleasure, and harmony. Eating fresh peaches drizzled with honey and a sprinkle of cinnamon, first of all, that is divine and sensual enough in its own right. However, they can also aid in beauty and health spells. Peaches, honey, and cinnamon eaten before you need to go and be a badass or kill an interview or go to a meeting for a promotion, or generally anything where you might need a little extra confidence with your own energy. This is a very, very simple working to do before anything of that nature. I've spoken about pomegranates on the show before, but we're going to talk about them again today because pomegranates are a seed in the dark. And of course, if you know the myth of Persephone, you'll know that pomegranates are a promise of return and renewal. Linked to underworld mysteries and cycles of death and rebirth, we can work with pomegranate and honey for rites of transformation or honoring ancestors, and of course, illuminating that which may still be in shadow for us. Cherry, which is iconic to say the least, is the scarlet kiss of life and longing and youth. Working with cherry and honey can bring in desire, sweetness, and vitality to your practice and your life. Cherries drenched in honey can be excellent for encouraging passion and creative fire, not just for ritual or magical working, but just to bring that energy into your life. Cherry is naturally youthful and vibrant, and its imagery being used in pop culture in a modern sense aids to that vitality and that youthful energy, and we can work with that as witches. Another fruit that works like a blade of sun cutting through shadow is lemon. Lemon, which is purifying, clarifying, and energizing. Working with honey and lemon can be an excellent thing to do if you need to cleanse spaces, tools, or yourself. If you're doing any kind of cleansing or banishing, drinking a glass of water with lemon and honey can really get your body and your energy and your physical self to a place where you can align energetically even more so with the intention and energy of cleansing. And it's really good for your immune system. Strawberries, which might be my favorite fruit ever. I eat strawberries almost every day when I can and when they're in season. Strawberries, other than being delightful and vibrant, are aligned with love, enchantment, and friendship, which is just delightful and lovely in every way. Strawberries are the heart's berries, blushing with secrets and shaped delightfully like a heart. So of course they are going to be directly tied to the workings of the heart, both magically and in our everyday lives. Working with strawberries covered in honey can sweeten relationships and deepen trust. Offering honeyed strawberries to a loved one or friend before engaging in meaningful connection can truly open the heart that much more and really allow us to drop into that space with them a little bit easier, especially if you have trust issues or you're working on healing something, or maybe they're working on healing something and you want to show them that you're a safe space. Honeyed strawberries can be an excellent ally in those kinds of engagements. Blueberries, which are the sapphire eyes of the forest, helping us see beyond and explore our inner vision, can be really, really delicious, but also really, really powerful when paired with honey. You can eat blueberries that have been honeyed before dream work, or offer them to your spirit guides or deities when you are trying to deepen your journey and go just a little bit further with them. And of course, also, anything that is blue-purple is connected to the third eye and crown chakra, so any kind of visionary, trance, or expansion work could be partnered with honeyed blueberries to align your physical body with the energy of the magical working you're about to engage with. That's what all of this information is for. When you consume honey, you take in its properties, you take in its magic into your physical body, which further aligns you with whatever you are intending to work with honey for. When you add in the fruit, that just creates another element of aligning your physical being with whatever working you want to engage with, magically, that is. So, that being said, let's talk about our very last fruit that I want to tell you about, which is blackberry. Blackberry is a powerful ally, and if you've ever seen a wild blackberry patch, you might know why. It has tons of thorns, and they get very thick and twisty very quickly, which means they're excellent for protection, banishing, and of course healing old wounds. Blackberries are a naturally warding and weaving plant ally. They just naturally grow that way. The stems of the blackberry weave in and around each other, protecting their sweet, juicy fruits from the world. You really have to seek out the blackberries if you want to get to the biggest, best, and juiciest blackberries, which are often in the heart of the thicket. So, working with blackberries and honey can be an excellent way to ward your physical being, to protect your own personal energy in your physical body. It can also help you to weave in magic through your soul. Perhaps you have old wounds, old patterns, and old ways of self-sabotage that you want to get rid of. Blackberry can help you get to the heart and the core of those things and provide a natural kind of energetic stitching into those old wounds that continue to open. It gives you the space and the sweetness to give yourself grace and find a way to move forward with that protection around you as well. So I could talk about blackberry forever because it's one of my favorite plants to work with. And if you want to know more about that, if that's calling out to you, please send me an email, which will be in the show notes. But perhaps by now you're seeing all of the possibility of taking honey's enchanting and enhancing nature and elevating it through the fruits of the season. Because here in the northern hemisphere, it's warm time. We're in spring. We're actually leaning towards the second half of spring and into summer. So it's fruit time, and adding honey to your fruit with a magical lens can be such a simple way to align yourself with whatever it is you're looking to align yourself with in your magical practice. There are just so many ways that you can weave honey and fruit into your magical spells, rituals, practice, you name it. Honeyed fruit offerings, small bowls of fruit drizzled with honey on your altar can be a great offering to spirits, deities, or the earth itself. And you can whisper your gratitude into the sweetness of that honeyed fruit. And the honey, because it is so sticky, you can imagine it naturally holding on to that gratitude and bringing it over to whatever you're offering it to. Honey pot spells are very, very popular and can be very, very effective and are so simple. And all you do is take a little jar or pot and you put herbs or stones that are associated with your intention into the jar, as well as the name or thing you want to sweeten up to you. You don't have to put herbs or anything other than honey into your jar either. You can just simply take a jar, write a name on it, stick it in there, and pour honey over it, and it will work very, very well. Trust me. You could do this for a landlord that's not being nice to you, or, anybody that you want to sweeten up to yourself. That is a very simple, very classic way to do it, and do it fast. So, if you do decide to do this, know that when the honey and the jar turns black, it's time to take it out, dispose of it, wash the jar out, and perhaps redo it if you need to. But there's tons of information about honey jars online. They're very simple. They're very accessible. If you wanted to take the practice of consuming the honey along with a fruit, or fruits, I guess, a little bit further, you could have a seasonal fruit feast where you go out into your local wild space, or if you don't have a local wild space, creating a sacred space inside your home and having a simple meal of fruits, bread, and honey, but offering the first bite to the land, the bees, and of course the hidden folk and spirits of your local environment can be a really connecting seasonal practice to do. Anointing yourself with honey can be such a beautiful ritual, especially for glamour magic or beauty magic. Honey is so good for your skin. It's nourishing for the skin, it's moisturizing for the skin, and if you have problems with acne, it can really help with acne. So making just a honey face mask where you literally just smear high quality honey on your face and leave it for 10 minutes, doing that once a week, twice a week, especially when your face is feeling dry or irritated or you have a acne outbreak, that can help a lot. Honey is magic, not just spiritually, but it does so much for your physical body. And you can turn that into as in-depth of a ritual as you'd like. And you can also build on it, kind of like we've been talking about. One of my favorite face masks to make is a strawberry and honey face mask, which is just strawberries that have been washed that come from a local farmer's market and local honey mashed up into a paste and put on my face for 10 minutes. It smells amazing and it feels good, and if I lay in the sun, I feel like an actual nymph of the forest. So, just an idea. You can always take it up a notch by adding in your herb, fruit, or oil of choice. Lastly, I want to present to you the idea of divination through taste. If you were to take a piece of honeyed fruit or bread or just local honey itself in a spoon and close your eyes and put it in your mouth and just savor it there. Chew it slowly. Let it really coat your entire mouth. And see what memories might rise up, what feelings it inspires within you, what images might flicker at the edges of your mind. The flavor could be a doorway. Divination is not always through tarot cards or runes or pendulums. It doesn't have to come from anything outside of you. And this can be an excellent way to build your intuitive and psychic gifts. Now, lastly, I have a blessing of sweetness for you as we finish up today's episode and this deep dive into the magic of honey. If you take a deep breath, I will leave you with this blessing of sweetness. Ready? Let's take a breath together. In and out. Very good. Now I leave you with this, dear listener. May you walk the fields of your life as the bee walks the meadow, gathering sweetness, weaving light. May your words be honey to those who need comfort, your laughter the blossom of wild gardens. May the fruits of your magic ripen under your care, fed by the golden patience of your soul. And may the sacred hive of the world, humming with the unseen but felt connection, bless you now and always. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. You can find all of my links and how to talk to me in the show notes. I'm Wishamaya, and until next time, don't forget to keep your roots deep and your dreams wild.